And that was the most painful time of my life, when it was like they took me out of heaven, having allowed me in for 3 months. And when I asked them why this had happened, they said, "We have work for you to do." And so what they did was they established a very basic communication with me, which anybody can have with spirit, which is telepathic, where you talk and you communicate through thought and through images, and what we call a clairsentient communication using a pendulum. And the pendulum is not the communication itself, but it is the way in which we can get a direct physical affirmation from the spiritual world. I mean, for example, they can move it to say yes, they can move it to say no, they can move it to say maybe. And when you build up this telepathic and pendulum communication, you can get better and better communications with all kinds of beings. And that's really what happened to me. After the activation by Om back in 1988, I was then given to literally communicate with beings across the full scale of creation. Up till that time, I'd been a photographer. Up till that time, I'd been very happy doing beautiful photographs of the historic houses of England. I was the main photographer for the National Trust in England, doing historical houses, beautiful interiors, very enjoyable work. But that wasn't the divine plan for me. The divine plan was that I should work with spirit to bring out special products which the human race could use to really uplift the quality of their lives. So the most important thing in our life is quality, because it doesn't matter whether you have a long or a short life. That is not important compared to the quality of what you do. And really what the gods and the goddesses are about, which I'm going to talk about now, and what all the other essences are about, because I've got 172 essences here and here, what all the other essences are about is basically bringing quality to life, really bringing meaning, fulfillment, quality, just raising your vibration to a point where life becomes a totally full and heavenly experience, instead of the very suffering experience that so many of us have upon the earth. And I can honestly say that although I've been very, very tested and had to go through every type of test and trial during my life, it has actually been a most amazing life. Because after my photography business went downhill and I got married and started having children, I then started working with Orosoma. And Orosoma was a wonderful challenge. And for 20 years, I was lab manager there. And during that time, I developed the product. I improved the colors with my technical knowledge that I'd had as a photographer. But more important, I started working more and more with spirit at every level to improve the energetics, to improve the integrity, to improve the quality of all those colors within Orosoma. And I learned that a color is one thing, but an energized color is something else. And after the energization of the bottles with a being called Siaso, putting energy in on 9 different levels, 9 different octaves, as I call it, into the bottles. They were literally shining. You could put them in a house at dusk and you literally saw them shine into the darkness. That's what spirit can do. Spirit can bring through the life energies into things, and with these life energies can completely transform everything. And so I went through an evolutional process in Orosoma, starting with going to world conferences, talking at the first 3 World Fluorescence Conferences, talking about the sea essences, first of all, which I started to make directly with spirit. And then I started making butterfly essences in 96. So in 94, I started making sea essences. And in 96, I started making butterfly essences. And suddenly, everything I'd been told by spirit at the start started to come true. I realized that I was on a journey with spirit to bring through a lot of very useful products for humanity. Now, right from the start, I started working with the gods and the goddesses. My very first guide was a goddess called Alina, and she is the goddess of this bottle here, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. And Alina is the love goddess of the divine planes, who is connected with what we call the solar planes, the planes of the sun. And the solar planes are the link between the divine creation and our creation. And very briefly, what I have in the diagram here is a diagram of 13 planes of creation. And the divine creation dovetails straight into our creation. The higher figure there is the human form, spanning the divine planes, spanning 7 divine planes. And down below is the human form spanning 7 planes of our creation. And if you notice, the bottom form has the top of the crown going straight into the feet of the one above. In other words, we form a continuous line from the divine creation into our creation. And the 2 creations are joined inside the sun. Our sun is not the origin of life energy, it's simply the halfway point. And what might amaze many human beings is that the origin of life energy in our creation is beneath our feet. Om, the highest being of God, lives inside the earth. And it turns out that the divine planes, the places where all the divine beings are actually around the earth. They're the layers of atmosphere around our earth. And these layers have a dual function, because they're also the layers of our creation, which are connected with our physical creation here. What we call the astral planes, where people go when they're dreaming, what we call the spiritual planes, where many human beings come from and go back to during our lifetimes. Everything that seems like space in our atmosphere is actually full of life. It's just full of life at different frequencies that we can't see, because our senses are inured to our physical frequency. So what the gods and the goddesses bring in their elixirs, and I call these elixirs, not essences. An essence is a life energy. It's a single life energy in a bottle. An elixir is a lot more than that. An elixir is the being energy of a goddess in this case, together with a whole family of other energies that she's channeled into this bottle. So you're receiving not only the vibrational benefit of her energy, you're also having the benefit of a family or a group of life energies that are closely connected with her. And the beauty of that is that a goddess or a god elixir is very uplifting. It will just bring you into a divine energy. So you in the lower planes here, what we call our creation, are literally lifted up into the divine creation. So that's the purpose behind the elixirs and the essences, that we can live the divine quality of life whilst we're on this earth. In other words, we're not here to suffer. We don't have to suffer if we live in line with the divine will. If we can use some of these beautiful energies that Spirit brings us, we can literally live a life that's blessed with health, happiness, harmony, and great fulfillment at every level. And this is not just an idle dream. This is reality. And actually, my life has been transformed by these essences. So what Om asked me to bring through 32 and a half years ago was a new mode of being, whereby with the help of elixirs and essences, we can literally lead a new life, a life of much greater resonance, health, vitality, strength, everything else.